Matt Choi. Welcome to the Meat Mafia podcast, brother.
I appreciate you having me on, man. I'm looking forward to this.
We're so fired up. What were you saying?
I feel like there's something about Matt where you can't say Matt without Matt Choi. And it's like one of those names that you just have to say the full thing.
The full name.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. It helps that each of them is like a one syllable, even though people are like, yo, is your full name Matthew? I'm like, yeah, but only my mother calls me that when I'm in some deep shit. But most times it's just Matt Choi.
I love it, man. Well, dude, we've been having so much fun just to get to know you better these last couple months in Austin. And you're honestly one of the most energetic and positive humans that we've ever met. So we were like, we got to just give this guy a microphone and some headphones and just start talking about stuff because you just have such an incredible perspective on endurance, building brands. And when I was doing research for this, I just assumed you'd been doing the social media thing for years. And it seems like your transformation into running and endurance sports and social media, it's only within like the last 2 to 3 years. Is that correct?
100%. I've been doing this like properly full time for like the past 3 years. But prior to that, I was just trying to figure out like what my brand's going to be about and like, who I actually was and like what my purpose was. And prior to that, I was working in a corporate job and I was doing personal training prior to that. So I always saw value through building brand, but I never understood like what I was going to talk about.
Yeah.
And obviously to your point, like I've refined my message a lot more. And as I've challenged myself more through physical feats, it's now turned into like who people see me from the screen in that sense.
When did you start falling in love with brands and kind of just like building into these companies? Because I know you being an ex-athlete, us being ex-athletes, like there is always that affinity when you're growing up, like, getting the cool pair of cleats or, getting like the right equipment and stuff like that. So I feel like naturally as athletes, we love brands. And I'm just wondering like, was that something that you just kind of like discovered after you graduated?
I mean, I majored in management and marketing in college, and I wasn't the best student. I always say this on pods. I cheated a lot through school, but football was like my identity. I always had a custom pair of Nike cleats with my name on it, my number on it, all those things. And I think as a kid growing up, especially as an Asian American, I always wanted to be like, I wanted to be a sponsored athlete. I wanted to feel what it was like to have endorsements and having all the gear decked out in one brand, whatever it might have been. I don't think for me though, on the social aspect, I didn't see it being a reality until like 2 years of me really going in on content. And then I started seeing creators actually building brand and getting repped by some of the biggest brands in the world, not just athletes, right? Like everyone sees LeBron James, Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving. But then I started seeing like guys like Jake Paul, Casey Neistat, and all these other creators that were then getting sponsored by brands. And I'm like, oh, there's a shift happening here. Because
Yes.
once you share your story, which creators, I believe, do a better job than athletes do, because athletes just show the result. You're Usain Bolt and you see him win gold, but you just see the finished product. Very few do you see him training and what he's eating and all the ins and outs of who humans really are. And I think when that crossroads happened, I was like, oh, shoot, I build my personal brand, and the brands that I want to work with at some point will come to the table.
I love that. In a focal point with your brand, Matt, is just your endurance journey, your running journey. And one of the similarities between the three of us is like we all graduated around the same time. So we're 2017, Harry's 2016. We played baseball in college, you played football in college. Endurance sports and running is not a central piece to that. I couldn't run 3 miles. Dude, I remember the first time, similar to you, I listened to David Goggins. My buddy got me into running. I went on a 3-mile run at like a 10-minute pace. And that was the first time I'd ever run 3 miles consecutively. So I think it would be really cool for the audience. Like, how do you go from college football player to now you're doing 5 marathons in 5 days? You're doing all these crazy endurance challenges. Like, where did you start and how does that progression happen to get you to where you are now?
Before the people think I'm crazy, 5 marathons in 5 months. But the 5 and 5, that'll be maybe in the future. I think how it happens is patience and persistence. I think that's the ingredients for it. And I think it translates into life. It's not a sexy answer, but it's actually the truth. I mean, when I first started getting into running, first it was just me downloading a new software, me trying to ask myself like, all right, what's my potential? I'm not a football player no more. I can't hide in that identity. So who am I now? And as I started hearing more about David Goggins' story and guys like Jesse Itzler and guys like Nick Bare, who seemingly are regular people, but have done extraordinary things. And so much of it was a mindset thing. It was pushing yourself, not really looking at what anyone else is doing in this world, just asking yourself as a man, as a woman, as a human, what is my potential? And am I actually maximizing it? And I started with that. It was the self-reflection of me asking myself like, all right, I'm a trainer now. Really staying in my niche of training football athletes because that's what I knew. But I wanted to find something that was uncomfortable as hell and start to lean into that discomfort. And
Mm.
running for me, I hated. I ran track in high school. I always tell this story. I only ran the 100 and 200 because I wanted to get faster for
Mm.
football.
Right.
My coach put me in the 400 one day for a time trial, and I lie to you not. Before the race even started, I already lost. I gave up at 300 meters and I walked it in to prove a point to just say, don't ever put me in the 400. I'm only here to do one and the two. That mindset shift of like that negative response of
Mm.
not doing things that people are asking you to do because it's out of your element. I wanted to lean into that feeling.
Mhm.
Mm.
So when I read Goggins' story, I'm like, damn, this guy was 300 pounds twice. He's ran 100-mile races, 200-mile races. I'm like, what can I start with? The fact that it was Memorial Day yesterday, the first challenge I ever did was 30 Murphs in 30 days. This was right in the middle of this was start of COVID where I got laid off as a trainer. I'm on unemployment. No gyms are open in Maryland. I have no physical gym now. So it's like that whole feeling of like no excuses. I
Yeah.
have a pair of running shoes. I had my neighbor build a pull-up bar with a PVC pipe in my mom's garage so I can bang out pull-ups every single day. And I just started with that. I would literally run the exact Murph workout, 1 mile, 100 pull-ups, 200 push-ups, 300 squats, another mile. 30 days in a row, 60 miles over that 30 days, X amount of pull-ups, push-ups, squats. And that was my base. And it
Mhm.
started there. And as I did that, I was like, all right, what's next? And I did 2,000 jump ropes in 30 every day for 30 days. And then I was like, all right, let me go out for a long run. And I put on my Instagram, I had like 1,500 followers. I was like, how many miles should I go run? And I put a poll and people were like 3 to 4 miles. And I put 5+ miles and everyone was
Mm.
like 5+. That day I ran the furthest I ever ran. It was like 7 miles. And I'm like, oh shit,
Dang.
I can do this. So to answer your question, that patience and persistence just over time, putting the reps in. Most people ask me like, how do I get started? Like, what's the secret program? Like, can you give me a 20-week
Mhm.
thing? It's like, no, I mean, start where you're at right now and feel it out. Your body will give you every response that you need. And it's just like a car. If you feel like your knees sore a little bit, your foot's in pain, take that response as like a check engine light, just like your vehicle, and do some maintenance on it.
Mm.
And over time, you do the right things in recovery, in sleep, with your nutrition, and treating your body the right way. It's amazing what the human body can do because you ask it, whatever you ask it to do, it will push way further than what you think.
Mhm.
100%. Take me back to the 30 days of just doing Murphs back to back to back. Were you ever thinking about just being like, you know what? I'm done here. I've done 10 in a row. That's good enough for me. Was there ever a point where you just were questioning yourself on that?
You know, I think the moment I started questioning myself was when I actually put the vest on. The first
Ooh.
14 days or 15 days, I didn't wear a vest. I did a body weight. And I told myself I'll do 15 days body weight and I'll do 8 days with the 10 pound and then a 7 days with the 20 pounder. And as you start to add in extra weight, your body now is like loaded with 205 instead of 195, right?
Mhm.
Then it's 215 instead of 195.
Right.
And that shit makes it a lot tougher. But there was never a moment where I was gonna be like, I'm gonna quit. Because for me, it was irrelevant of what the time was. I was just trying to challenge myself. And that's actually how I treat most of the shit I do. I don't really look at it as like, oh, I need to go beat that person's time or, oh my God, look what they're doing. Like, I'm in the game of just trying to be the best version of me. And I don't really look at what anyone else is doing. That's when, even when people give me negative feedback, positive feedback, I just don't let that shit get to my head.
Mm.
Right. And especially through social, we live in this game where it's so easy to fall in love with the
Mm.
admiration and the love. But as soon as someone gets a little negativity or a little bit of hate or a little pushback, how are you going to respond there? And I think for me, to answer your question, like it never entered my brain like, oh, quit, because I'm just trying to compete against myself. But I'd be lying. Like, I mean, anytime you put yourself through a physical feat, there's always some doubt. There's always some uncertainty. And it's human of us. We're not robots. Like we're not
Mhm.
all AI, right? Like we
Yeah.
have emotions. So of course there's those feelings, but I never let those feelings overtake like just my discipline in it.
Mm.
What were some of the most noticeable mental and physical differences between Matt on day 1 of the challenge versus Matt on day 30 of that challenge?
Mm. I think the biggest thing was just, not negotiating with the emotional
Yes.
Dude.
emotion side of it, right? Is just like obviously it's gonna suck in the moment. Even yesterday, I felt that shit on that 17th set. I'm like, damn, this shit does suck. The thing about the Murph, and even when someone said it at Squatch yesterday, they were like, this is one of those things where no one knows if you actually did your full reps.
Yes.
Right.
No
No
one
one
knows.
knows.
No one knows.
Only you can tell yourself. Only you will know if you actually cheated it or if you completed it.
Right.
And I think what I learned on day 30 was you gain confidence by proving to yourself, right, through your actions of who you actually are.
Mhm.
And on day 30, I was like, I knew I did the reps. I might not have done them with perfect form, right? And I admitted it even yesterday. I'm like, I didn't do every rep strict. I didn't
Right.
go down to full past 90 degrees. And I'll be honest with that. But I did every single rep, right? And I think for me, I learned the discipline of just showing up for yourself and what that does over time.
Mm.
That old saying of consistency compounds, of course, it's not a sexy thing again,
Mhm.
but it's just the fact.
Mm.
You do
Yes.
something every single day and you keep showing up on a podcast for your for your health, for your wealth, for your relationships. Like you show up giving your best effort, no one could ever question the work that you've put in.
Mm.
And that's why I love content. I love fucking content for that exact reason because
Yeah.
there's receipts. My buddy Sean was in town last week and he's like, Matt, like, what do you do with all the extra clips? You delete them? I'm like, fuck no. I was like, all of these are receipts.
Mm.
When I think back to 20 years and I show my kids what I've done, I want to be like, I showed up every day, regardless of if it performed well or not, whether I wanted to be there or not. I showed up.
Mm.
And just like journaling, these videos are all receipts.
Yeah.
In a different form
Right.
in 2023.
Mm. Can you talk about your journey as a creator through some of these challenges? Because I imagine you starting that Murph challenge, was that the first time you really like started putting content out there? Like, oh, hey, I'm gonna hit record and just see like if people are interested in this sort of thing.
I was posting content prior. A lot of it was built around the first brand I started, which was the Athletes Marathon. It was a performance training brand. And I was putting a lot of content around like the football athletes that I was training.
Gotcha.
Drills, like receiver specific stuff, like cone drills, X, Y, and Z. So I was making a ton of content, but it was the first time where I actually looked at myself as I'm going to build personal brand, not just an actual business brand.
Mhm.
And that was the first challenge where I'm like, all right, I'm going to put myself in front of the camera instead of me showcasing the athletes I was training in the before and after.
Mm.
I was like, I'm going to point the camera to myself.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I've heard you. Oh, go ahead.
No, go for it.
I was gonna say I've heard you describe before that you don't really look at what you're doing on Instagram as creating content. You look at it more as like sharing your story and your perspective. I think you learned that from Gary Vee. I'm pretty sure I've heard you
Mhm.
say that before. So I'd love for you to dig into that mindset because I think this concept of creating content really holds a lot of consumers from making that jump to content creator. Or I feel like you've been able to take the pressure off yourself and just be like, no, I'm just documenting my story, my wins, my losses, my journey. I think it's a really powerful perspective that you have.
100%. And to your point, I mean, I've learned so much from Gary. And like Gary's like a board of advisor for me.
Mm.
And I think for a lot of humans, you need to find who those people are and then start to consume their stuff like it's a Bible. But the document, don't create is the framework, right? Like you document the journey, not just the end result. Similar to what I said about Usain Bolt or LeBron James is document how you're getting there,
Mhm.
right? Because people actually fall in love with the process, not just you winning the gold medal or you winning the NBA finals, right? So I just unpacked that and I unpeeled it, right? It's like an onion. I just started showcasing like me building or me trying to do the thing, right?
Mhm.
Me trying to be a creator instead of me trying to say, these are the 5 tips on how to be a content creator. I just say, this is how I grew my social
Mhm.
Right.
versus not how to do it. And it's a Hormozy thing too of like, so many people, creators specifically, talk from a weak frame because they try to act like they're the expert. When in reality, you should just be the expert on yourself. Instead of saying how to, say how I.
Yeah.
And if you change that framework shift, it becomes so much easier to scale your content because you don't have to be the expert. You just have to be an enthusiast
Mm.
in whatever you do. I'm not a running expert, but people think when they think of running, I might be one of the first people they think of
Yeah.
Right.
because I'm out there so much. But there's so many more people, coaches and other runners that are way more qualified, that know way more than I do, but they don't talk from it in that frame. I'm just trying to share my story. And I think what it leads to more than anything is the ability to scale it even further. The moment I want to stop running and I want to get into triathlons or get into climbing or get into mountain biking, it'll be a very easy pivot for me to
Mhm.
just say, hey, I'm going to start learning this activity and I'm going to show you guys what I'm doing on the process of building this skill set.
Right.
I love learning new shit because I always want to be a student. For such a long time, I cheated in everything in school. I never applied myself. So now in this age of my life, I'm like, I want to always be the dumbest person in the room. I always want to be a student. And the more and more I see like the smartest people in the world, they do the same exact thing.
Yes.
It's a tried and true principle. I went wake surfing with my brother and a couple buddies last week. I sucked and I loved it. I told my buddy Dylan, and he's a pro surfer, and I'm like, I love this shit.
Yeah.
I love that feeling of like, oh, you can't even get up on the board.
Mhm.
You can't even, like, you know what I'm saying? Like the bare minimum, I was like, I love this shit because I always want to feel like a student, no matter what age I'm at, no matter how much quote unquote success is happening in my life. I want to find things that challenge me, no
Mm.
matter where I'm at.
Who do you feel like you're speaking to when you're creating content? Because I feel like a lot of people struggle with just like taking the first step, and something that I resonate with your message, like what you were just talking about. It's really about just like being open and being willing to like put yourself in the right spot to like make mistakes,
Mm.
like not really worry about the end result and just like start doing stuff. Like your Murph challenge. I mean, it's a perfect example. Like just do it and see what happens on the other side.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm speaking to a lot of people that are just in their own head, just like how I was, of the fear of like the judgment, right?
Mhm.
That's really what stops most people from creating. And Gary helped me with that fear of you can't keep living in high school. Like high school's over. You can't care about what your ex-girlfriend or your friends from high school or college are thinking about you at this point in life because quite frankly, they don't really care. Because if they did, then they'd pay your bills.
Right.
So the thought of having someone else's feedback or opinion dictate or be stronger than your own
Mhm.
is just ludicrous. So the person I feel like I'm speaking to is that person that's in their own head of like, oh, I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough, I'm not the best. I am not any of those things.
Yeah.
I did not think I was worthy. I am not the best. But the more and more you show your truths, the more and more you show the process, over time you build confidence.
Mm.
And through that confidence, you start to realize that failure is good.
Mm.
The more you fail, the faster you fail and you overcome and you get comfortable with that feeling of, I suck, the quicker you will start to achieve the things you actually want to achieve.
Mm.
It's an incredible service what you're doing to people because I think back a few years ago, it's like part of how Harry and I got started is we both started sharing our own personal health journeys of like how we use diet and lifestyle to kind of overcome like illnesses or things that we were dealing with. And I remember the first blog post that I wrote on Twitter that went really viral. I remember thinking to myself, okay, this performed really well, but I had written this thing out like 3 times when I was living in New York City and scrapped it because I either thought it sucked or I was so worried about like what my friends from high school or college were going to think or judge me. And it just makes me think about all the people that have this creative talent that can't get over this hurdle because they're so worried about what other people are thinking. And I remember just thinking, I'm like, dude, if you actually want to do this stuff and help people and have a brand, you're gonna get judged, but you can't let that define you. You need to just overcome it and just put the first post out there and just see how it performs. So for you to be able to speak to people in that way, it's such a valuable skill set because there's so many people that have incredible gifts that are worried about judgment, so they're not putting their content out there.
100%, dude. We were at VCon last week and something Eric Thomas said, he
Mm.
said, 99% of the people follow the 1%, the people that are confident and know who they are, because most people don't know who they are.
Yeah.
1% of the world actually knows what their purpose is, what they're trying to achieve, and 99% of the world follow them because they actually know who they are.
Mhm.
Most people in this world don't know what they're trying to do. They don't know who they are. They don't know what their purpose is. And I think if you're listening to this right now, like maybe take a pause and ask yourself, like, what are my core values? What am I about? And if money didn't matter, like what would be the things that would fire me up? I literally, if I lost all my followers, if I lost all the money in my bank account, I would do the same shit I did this morning.
Mm.
Go on a nice run, get a pair of shoes, do some pull-ups, get in the plunge, get some exposure to the sun. Like I don't live this like sexy facade of a life of, oh my God, this is what an influencer should be like. I think most people need to be more simple. They need to not need a lot of things. They need to
Yeah.
just be simple as shit. And the more you lean into that simplicity, like a stoic, you realize that there's so much shit in this world that you don't need. And ask yourself, why are you chasing after frivolous shit?
Mm.
And I think for me, that's where it comes from. It's like, I don't need a lot of shit.
Mm.
So if I lost everything, I would be like, let's rise up again.
Yeah.
Brett and I always joke. We're like, yeah, we really don't need much. We need like, a few steaks, a cast iron, some fire, like a gym.
Running
and we're
shoes.
good. Yeah, running
Yeah.
shoes. What do you say to someone who answers that question? What are your core values? What are you really going after in life? Like if they answer, I don't know, like they don't really know. They're stuck. They're trying to figure it out. Like how do you take that person and help them make the next step and starting to figure that out?
I love this. I think the best way to find out what you want to do is to start figuring out what you don't want to do.
Mhm.
That's the best way. Like if you don't know, then you need to try new things. You need to be curious and be open-minded to opportunities. A lot of people don't know because in society we've been taught to be a student and then to be an employee. So of course we've been hardwired in our software to be a follower, not a leader. So if you don't know what you're doing right now, then start to ask yourself, what are the things that you've already accomplished or what have you done in your life that you know that I'm not about that. I don't want to be an accountant. I don't want to be an employee. All right, well, then you check those two things off. Now you need to open up your mind and be like, all right, let me go try something new and see if this is the thing. I didn't think, bro, I thought I was going to impact this world because I was going to be the first Asian American football player.
Yeah.
I'm making more impact now as a creator and a runner than I could have ever dreamed of in the football space. And the thought of that only happened because I had an open mind. I was open to new shit and being curious and leaning into that discomfort. For people that are having that feeling here, I would just say, try new shit. And you've already done some stuff in your life. So you already know that you don't want to do those things. So lean into new stuff and start to check the box off. And it's not going to happen overnight. There's not a 30-day fix. It's not like some this get rich quick scheme thing. It's not. Like, you actually want to live a fulfilled and purposeful life, you need to try and figure out who you are as a human. And that journey is not easy. And the path is not the same for everyone. The reason I loved and resonated with David Goggins' story is he's like all these self-help gurus and all this bullshit, right? His book is not about like 7 steps to highly effective people. It's about you really finding who you are.
Mhm.
And on that journey, there's no exact blueprint or plan, but what does start is that accountability of the mirror.
Mm.
That person you see in
Yes.
the in the mirror. It starts with that person. That's how you're gonna find and get closer to the purpose and all those things of values and whatever it might be. But if you skip that step and you're trying to find everything else of the fast course, the book that's gonna save yourself, the podcast, it's not in that stuff.
Right.
That stuff can help the process of downloading new software, but you need to do the inner work.
Yeah. A lot of people wanna run mile 2 without having run mile 1 and just, going through the, like, prerequisites for having a like, successful and happy life. Like, you need to go through some of the suck and learn what you don't like. Like, it's
100%.
huge.
I have a question for both of you guys. You start and then you answer as well. I'm just curious, like you're talking about David Goggins. I'm thinking about how this podcast was literally started because Harry and I did an Ironman together in Waco
I
last
love
year.
that.
And your
2 years
transformation
ago.
2 years ago now, holy
It's
shit,
amazing.
time flies. Your transformation running was a massive catalyst. Why do you think that running is such a effective tool at like personal transformation for people?
Mhm.
And the reason why I'm asking you that is I feel like in the alternative health space, there's always like there's all this disagreement about, oh, should you run? Should you not run? No, you should do strength training. You shouldn't run. Like, but I feel like there's so many people whose lives have been impacted and changed forever from endurance sports. So I'm just curious why you personally think that is.
First off, I would say you should do all of it. You should strength train, you should run, you should do everything. You should be hard to kill
Yeah.
as humans, right? It shouldn't just be one thing, but I think what running does, it is allows you to sit with your thoughts, sit with solitude,
Hmm.
and to feel that inner bitch voice of mile 2.5, and you're like, I wanna stop.
Hmm.
The ability to actually say, I'm gonna finish it through, I'm gonna see it through the end. There's a lot of sharpening, there's callousing happening in those moments,
Hmm.
and most people don't enjoy it. And if you build more of that mental grit of, I'm gonna actually sit through this suffering,
Mhm.
chosen suffering, I think that's why so many people find blessings or learnings from it because it is a chosen feeling, right? Like you're literally putting yourself in something that is uncomfortable, especially when you're coming from the lifting background.
Yeah.
When people get so good in the weight room, that shit starts to get easy. Pulling 315, pulling 405, that like it gets easy to do that. So you should start to challenge that other voice of most people say, I'll never do cardio. I couldn't imagine it. And that already is why you should lean into it.
Yeah.
So I think to answer your question, I think there's just that solitude. You're in your own thoughts, and there's a lot of time to reflect. When you're in between a set of pulling 405 to 515, there's only like 30 seconds, maybe 3 minutes or whatever the rest time is. When you're out on a long run with no music and it's only you and your thoughts, there's a lot of time for deep reflection and solitude.
Mm.
What do you
Yeah.
think? Do
I
you,
would I would build on that. So, I was gonna say there's a rhythm and pattern to running that lets you sit with your breath with this cadence that you can create for yourself, and I think that expands into what you were saying, where you do have that time to actually just like flow through your thoughts, flush out, that inner bitch comes to surface, and you actually have to like confront it instead of just dropping the bar and going and sitting down and getting a drink of water. So there's something about running where it creates this order of you know, you're going to get into a rhythm, you're going to get into the flow of the run, you're going to get deep into that run, and you're going to just find like a little bit of peace. And I think a lot of people really resonate with that, you know, runner's high, because they're in a moment of almost like this just stillness. And when I'm out on a run, you know, the first 10 minutes is always like, oh man, like here we go.
Yeah.
But then you get through 10 minutes and you can actually just go way longer than you expected, because you find that cadence. And there is something to that, because like when you're trying to find yourself, or like, you know, build yourself from the ground up, you need to find order. You need to find something that you can build yourself up around. And like amongst the chaos, you have to create something to form yourself around. It's like there's almost
Mm.
something like biological about that. Like you need to have something to grow into. So I think
Primal.
that, yeah, right.
It is.
There's beauty in the simplicity of it as well, where it's like you don't need a fancy gym, you don't need weights, you don't even need a pull-up bar. You literally just need a pair of shoes, your thoughts. You can go out and just get an incredible workout in. And also, I think you touch on this, Matt. There, you can't run away or muscle yourself through it. You're just like, I'm here. I can only put one foot in front of the other, and you're literally a different person from the time you start that run to the time you finish the run. Let alone, you know, you run every day for 30 days or a year. You're different. You could transform within 2 to 3 years.
100%. I mean, if to your point, it forces you to be present.
Mhm.
Don't bring your phone. I mean, I bring my phone because I create, but
Yeah,
don't bring your phone, and just really like analyze how you're feeling.
yeah,
And I think the more and more you do that, to your point, you get into that flow state, that quote unquote runner's high, and it hits everyone at a different point, but you start to download different software.
mhm,
And I keep bringing that point up because I think for most people, like we have such a poor software already. So the process of rebuilding that, it's not like the Matrix. Like I don't just get plugged and learn jujitsu in 30 seconds.
yeah,
It's takes a lot longer. And the more and more you spend time into those feelings, into those that uncertainty, you start to realize like, oh shit, I can overcome this.
Mm,
This doesn't suck as much as I thought.
mhm,
And you start to build, you start to callous yourself. And then to you guys' journey, like you can fucking complete an Ironman. You can start doing marathons, and it doesn't have to be a thing where you have to do it all the time. But the thought of you, the feeling of knowing that at least you can accomplish it,
yeah,
someone that's a lifter, someone that's a bodybuilder, like don't say never. Like the words we say really matter. And like the more and more you realize, like, oh, I can't do this, I'll never do that.
mhm,
That's actually you feeding yourself that uncertainty. And the moment you break that, you realize that your potential is limitless.
mm.
The moment I got more into running, I realized I could be an entrepreneur. I can fucking build a brand. I could do all these things because if I could run a marathon or a 50-mile race or a 100-mile race, building a business is gonna be light work.
Yeah.
dude,
And it gives you that confidence.
Yeah, the mental endurance that you build through going through something like that is incredible. Like you just learn how to realize that there's always another side, that like if you just keep putting your feet in front of each other, like you will get somewhere. And it might not be exactly where you want to be, but like in business, I think like the endurance sports really lends itself to helping people who are just going through uncertainty or just challenging times. Like kind of just figure out how to like control your thinking, control your thoughts, prioritize. Like, hey, like what games do I need to play to get myself out of this little rut?
Mm,
Because
mhm.
there's so many like you know, little traps out there for people who are in business, and it's easy to like lose confidence in yourself if you haven't had success in a while with business. Like it's tough out there.
dude, business is it's a sport.
Yeah.
And it's more like a marathon than it is a sprint.
Yeah,
Like if you're trying to build something meaningful. And I think the analogy there is just great because if you treat your business like a marathon and you're slow and you're patient, but you're persistent over time and you keep showing up and you're disciplined, over time you will build something. Right now, the magnitude of who Elon Musk is versus a small business is obviously two different mindsets, but you can still build a very successful business if you treat it and you take it the right steps along the way. And I think if anything, running with content has shown me to like implement those soft skills that aren't sexy, but implement them because it's actually the keys to success.
that's such a good analogy. The concept of like building a business or a brand and comparing it to a marathon, where both do require pain to do anything of value, to finish the marathon, to build a business. And I think back to like where you were a couple of years ago. Obviously, you're not working with like Nike or Kane footwear. Now you're at this point where you've built this incredible brand because you've weathered the storm. You're willing to go from 1,500 followers to 2,500 to 50K to 100, whatever those progressions look like. There it wasn't just fun along the way, right? It's like you just kept putting in rep after rep after rep, video after video, and now you're here. But there was pain in that process, and that's like now I'm sure you probably think like that was just part of your journey. It was an inevitable part of the process.
100%. I mean, I think it makes a story better. No one wants to like, who wants to read a book or watch a movie of someone's journey just being this like progressive like path, right? Like everyone,
Mhm.
people like highs and lows. We're in the freaking Bitcoin comments. Like the opportunity to actually hold when the shit sucks
Yeah.
is the game of life.
Yeah.
It's sticking through it. It's understanding that it's going to be highs and lows. Just like in a marathon, people hit the wall at 16, 17, and you feel like shit. You feel like, how can I conquer 9 more miles? But the ability to stick it through, stay present, 1 foot at a time, whether it's in running or in a business, like it's actually what makes it so much more rewarding at the end, understanding the failures and the resiliency that you built along the way because it builds confidence
Mhm.
and you continue to compound confidence over time. The small micro L's and failures don't feel like shit.
Mm.
Yeah.
It's just the part of the process. And if you ask anybody, anyone that's been successful, no one's just had this linear path of success. They've always had micro L's. And if you treat those L's as lessons, there's nothing stopping you.
Mm.
And I think people always ask me, like, what's your plan? Like, what's the 5-year goal, the 10-year goal? Like, for me, like, there's no exit strategy when you're building a personal brand.
It's life.
Like, I'm gonna do this shit until I die.
Yeah.
And with that mindset, I just go slow and I build it how I want to build it, doing things I want to do. I don't ever feel like I work,
Yeah.
honestly.
Yeah.
Like my work is play, truthfully. It seems like work to other people of, I can't believe you're running all this shit, man. How do you run a marathon and then run a Murph? Like they can't fathom it. But for me, I feel like I get to just be an athlete and a kid.
Mm.
And I just get to showcase what I'm doing and sharing it along the way and hopefully inspiring people as I go. But it's that Naval saying of once you find what's work for others but play for you, you're in a good spot.
Mm.
And I think for anyone that's listening to this is like to find that it's a gratifying feeling every day when you wake up and you feel like it's Monday or Saturday or whatever day you want it to be.
Yeah. It's so amazing to think that like you express this mindset of like being willing to go slow and realize that you're in it for life. Yet that same mindset has led to this transformation of like 3 years ago, you were an unemployed trainer with 1,500 followers to now it's like you're doing marathons every month. You're working with brands that you dreamed of working with. You're living essentially your dream life, I would say. But it's incredible. Like that's a short period of time, dude. Like I'm sure you've taken inventory of like, I can't believe this is where I was 3 years ago versus now where I am in Austin. Like you must be proud of yourself.
100%. And I think it's funny because like anytime I get a chat with my mom, because she really saw this shit from like the dirt. I was in my mom's living room and dining room table building content. She's like, she would always be like that mom, the number one supporter. Matt, that video was good. I'm like, Mom, that video sucked. Don't fucking lie to me. But I love that. I mean, to your point, man, it's super humbling. And I feel it when people come up to me and they're like, Matt, like what you're doing has truly helped me. And not that I need that validation, but it makes me reflect and not like and pat myself on the back a little bit to be like, damn, like everything I manifested, the people that I get to sit at the table with, when 3 years ago I was like, I want to be around them. Like I want to be at the table with them. That I get to now literally sit at the table with. I think if anything, it's just like I hope that it inspires other people to find out what they want to do and to start trying to do it.
Mhm.
Right. And like that path is not perfect, but over time, if you keep showing up, like we live in a world of technology now where people that you look up to, they're not that far away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like they're pretty fucking accessible. And as long as you show up and you're trying to be the best version of yourself, I don't know, man. It's been amazing the journey that I've been on. And to your point, like it's I want to do so much more, but yet I'm content with where I'm at.
Mm.
And I think that people mistake complacency with contentment,
Mhm.
right? And like I understand that I have a lot of shit. People that look at what I'm doing, look, what I'm living right now is their dream life. That's their
Yes.
North Star. I have ambition in this world to make more impact, to do more. And it gives me that level of like gratitude and perspective of I've done a lot of shit. I want to do more, but don't look past at what you fucking built.
Mhm.
And that feeling of being in the middle ground of not being complacent and not being greedy is where I sit. And
Mm.
it's why I'm able to show up the way I do for people and for myself because my cup is full as fuck.
Yeah.
People always have that saying of like, if you want to love someone else, love yourself. And it's gotten to the point where I love myself so much that it's so easy for me to give love to other people because I don't think that my game is going to be affected. And to your point, like that's just how I see it.
Yeah.
Is there anything about your experience with college football that you feel like is you're still carrying with you today, like something that's serving you from that past experience? Because I know, both of us look back at our baseball careers with mixed feelings. Like, we left some meat on the table, or just little small lessons that you learn as a collegiate athlete. There's so many of them, whether it's practicing or just tough games or big games where you just like learn a little bit something about yourself. Like, is there anything that you're carrying with you today that you still think is valuable?
So much shit. I think there's two things I really think of, and one's kind of positive and another's negative. The first is like discipline. And I always tell people it's easy when you're on a team to be disciplined because coaches are relying on you, your teammates are
Mhm.
relying on you. But in this game, when you have to be self disciplined, it's taking that same framework, but applying it to yourself.
Mm.
No one's calling me or texting me, Matt, wake up, go run. I just going to do that shit.
Yeah.
So that discipline I've learned through football has definitely translated into who I am right now. Every single day, the way I show up, I show up as if I'm the fucking team. I'm the owner. I'm the head coach of my life. So I show up making sure that I'm accountable to myself. The second thing, though, was my mindset when it came to relationships with coaches and peers like that I had in college. I didn't have a good relationship with my head coach or even my receivers coach. And it's funny how I'm like, you guys are seeing me now. Like people always say, Matt, you're so fucking positive. Like I never see you upset. Like, how are you
Yeah.
on a bad day? Right. People didn't see how I was in college. I was a positive guy, but when things weren't going my way, it was so easy for me to turn my head and talk shit about my receivers coach, not have a good relationship because I wasn't getting the playing time I wanted, right? And I've learned through the negative of my college experience because I feel like I did leave a lot on the table. I didn't feel like my output in college was what my true potential was. And a lot of it, whether you say it's political or not, I was just in my own fucking head. I was the guy that I'm now trying to talk to, period. The
Yeah.
person that has that doubt, that is the woe is me mentality. Oh, I'm not playing because my receivers coach is playing the political game of playing the seniors, pointing the fucking finger. I was that guy in college. So now as I reflect, I'm like, I want to be the exact opposite person of that. I want to own all my shit, my shortcomings, my mistakes. When I fuck up, it's on me. When people in my business or company aren't doing well, it's on me. It's a reflection of
Mm.
my leadership. I always point the finger to myself because for a time in college, I was always like, it's his
Yeah.
fault. It's his fault. Our head coach has been around 20 years, doesn't want to change the culture. And I'm like, I listen to so much Gary. I'm like, I was full of shit. I take that so much for me now because just a couple years ago, that wasn't a long time ago, that I was that person. To your guys' point of who am I talking to? I hope someone that hears that right now can realize that they can change.
Mm.
They can adapt. You don't have to be who you've always been. And the moment you take accountability of your life and the person that you want to become, the sky's the fucking limit. And I'm a proof of it. I have not always been the person that you guys see right now.
It's funny that you say that because that was actually one of the questions that I had written down is because when I look through your content, whether it's your videos, your Instagram, the first thing I think is, okay, this guy's having a ton of fun and he also has amazing energy and he's always positive, not just in his content. When I see you at Collective, when we meet up at runs or like just things around Austin, I'm like, you always have a smile on your face. You're always like, you have this great inflection in your voice. And I'm like, was this guy always this way? Or there were things like, what were the things that Matt did along the way to get him to this point where they are now? Because there's so many people that are unhappy. And I think about like, if I was to ever have kids, that would be the first, that would be the best thing I could think about being able to pass on to my kids is like the ability to have like an amazing positive attitude, you know?
100, I mean, it's the one thing that is controllable by each human. It's just a matter of how you see it. When I was in college, I saw the world half full, not half, I'm sorry, I saw it half
Yeah.
empty, not half full. And because I wasn't in full control of my circumstances, I was getting emotional with the result of what I was doing as a player. To your point of the old saying of control the controllables, I can't dictate what my coaches do. I can only dictate my actions. And that was the biggest thing where I'm like, I think for most people, this is where it'll really hit is like, you're in full control.
Mhm.
And once you feel that and actually understand that, that no matter the circumstances of your household as a kid, no matter who your coaches are or who your boss is, you're in control. You're deciding to stay in that relationship. You're deciding to stay at that job. If you really hate it, if you really feel like you can do more, then prove it to yourself. And for me, it was easy for me to just sit back and point the finger once again. I think how I found that was by leaning into the uncomfortability, leaning into discomfort and owning and having accountability for my actions. It was, it's so, I guess when I was in college, I was just more immature. Like I just like I wasn't applying myself in other aspects outside of just the one thing that I cared the most about, and it made me a one trick pony.
Mhm.
And it wasn't until I started to reflect further and have a different board of advisors that I started to realize that I was fucking part of the issue.
Yeah.
So I think how I show up now is because I've downloaded software that's different and
Mhm.
I've put it into practice as a practitioner.
Mm.
Most people read headlines, they see a video on YouTube or they see Gary for 30 seconds and they're like, they try to just consume that in that short fashion. You really got to hear it
Yeah.
and then put it into practice. And I think that latter piece, so many people miss. They read the book, they listen to Goggins, but it stops there. They're like, they feel like they're doing inner work because they're
Mhm.
learning. But if you never practice the shit that you learn, it's just like a sport. We study, we do, we learn the playbook. But if you think you're gonna just learn the playbook in the freaking meeting room and
Yeah.
then not go in practice and execute it, then you got the game fucked up.
Yeah, good luck.
So that's how I treat everything. I'm like, oh, I learned something now. I'm like, all right, I read about it. I heard someone talk about it. Now let me go do it.
Mm.
Yeah.
And in the doing is how most humans actually learn. How I learned to be positive and actually show up for myself so I can show up for others was me to start taking accountability for my actions and my shortcomings and saying, hey, instead of me pointing the finger, I'm gonna own that shit and I'm gonna find the best way for me to output this to other people.
Mm. You mentioned discipline and ownership, which I think are two core traits to anyone who's gonna build something of significance that lasts. And one of the core parts of our show is nutrition, obviously. And I think nutrition is an amazing way to exercise both of those things at the same time because it's something that you need to do every day. Or, I mean, unless you're like fasting or something, but you need to feed yourself every day and you have a choice to take ownership and be disciplined about the inputs that you put into your body. So I'm really just curious, like, how do you think about the nutrition piece of all the things that you're doing? Because obviously you do a lot of stuff. You're running marathons and doing hell on the hill. So like, what does your fueling look like? Like, how do you fuel this lifestyle that is really of an abundance life?
I treat most things with the 80-20 rule. 80% of the time, I'm eating whole foods, very little processed shit, very little snacks. Most of the stuff I eat is at home and I cook it myself and it's one ingredient items. Now the other 20%, when I'm wanting to crush an In-N-Out burger or wanting to go and drink a beer when I'm at the Boston Marathon,
Yep.
is the 20% of me just being a human.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people that are so 100% and they're doing all the biohacking shit. I'm like, that's dope. But we've also got one chance to live on this earth. And I don't want to ever feel like I'm like succumbing to my environment and always having to be like, oh my God, I can't do this. I can't eat at that spot, dude. So I feel like I'm like the 80-20 rule in everything that I do. Most of the times I'm very controlled. I know exactly what I'm inputting in my body. And then the other 20%, when I want to have my own thing or like have a cheat meal or whatever it might be, I'm like not mad at myself. I don't build anxiety
Yeah.
that does not need to be there, right? Like cortisol is our body's and our mind's ability to just put stress on ourselves. And the more you do that because you didn't eat the perfect meal or you didn't have exactly 190 grams of protein, I think at times humans put stress on ourselves.
Mhm.
So for me, I'm very stress free about it. Most meals I cook at home and I understand what I'm consuming. The other times, if I can't always dictate and control it, then I just don't stress about it. So a lot of I got a nutrition cert when I was a trainer. I'm well versed in terms of like regenerative agriculture and understanding the where the food is coming from. And the biggest tip I can give to someone is just eat whole foods, drink a gallon of water a day, and do your best to limit the processed stuff, sugars, potato chips, X, Y, and Z. If you shop, when I shop at the grocery store, I just stay on the outside of the store.
So simple.
Don't go through the line. Don't go through the aisles. Like that's where the Teddy Grahams and the potato chips and all the bullshit, if it can stay in your closet for months without going spoiled, there's a fucking problem.
Yeah.
Most of the stuff, vegetables, fruits, they should probably go bad if you're not consuming it quickly.
Mm.
So that's how I treat it. Is I get a gram of protein every single day based on my body weight. I eat as much veggies and fruits as possible. And when I eat carbs, I'm not mad about it. I'll crush some sweet potatoes.
Oh yeah. Dude, I see you crush some Korean barbecue too.
I love Korean bar. I mean,
It's my favorite food.
Korean barbecue there's not great ones in Austin, but yes, it's amazing.
When I lived in New York, that was like my favorite like celebratory meal.
I love that.
So good.
It's great. It's good in New York.
What are you eating after you crush a marathon in PR? What's the go-to post-marathon
I
meal?
love cheeseburgers.
Yeah.
Really? In and out?
It doesn't have to be in and out. It could be at a bar or a pub or like a, somewhere that just like
Yeah.
I just need calories. So it's just like I'm a big fan of cheeseburgers with some sweet potato fries. That would be like the go-to. But I mean, me and my brother after the marathon, we went to Korean barbecue. Dallas, dude, I didn't know had a lot of an Asian population.
Hmm.
Like they had a lot, like 2 Koreatowns,
Yeah.
Really?
which in Austin, we don't even have one. So we had Korean barbecue right after the marathon there. But a lot of it just depends on like the city I'm in based on the food that's popular there. Like if I'm like on the East Coast or if I'm in the Pacific West, I'll get seafood. Like, just
Yeah.
kind of varying where I'm at. But I would say most times I just crave burger and like some fries. Like that shit I could just eat any day of the week.
Are you a foodie at all?
I somewhat am. I think my brother is more than I am. I mean, I enjoy going to dope food spots, but for me, it's not the number one thing.
Yeah.
But I don't like, dude, Austin's a great example. Like I have like my spots that I love going to in Austin. I just keep
Mhm.
going to them. Like I don't like once I find the spot I like, I will just continue to go. And when friends come in town, I'm like, yeah, I'll bring. I know where we're gonna go. But I wouldn't say I'm like. I have friends that are in the blogging space that are big foodies. I'm
Mhm.
not on that level.
Yeah. You're simple. You know what you like: cheeseburger, fries, pizza. So you can do some
Yeah.
bagel reviews too.
I love. I mean,
Yeah.
dude, we're from Jersey, New York.
Yeah.
So like Austin is limited to bagel spots because it's
Yeah.
all breakfast tacos. But I love showing the human side of who I am.
Mhm.
Right? Like, I think for most people, they think that these influencers, biohackers, sometimes we're creating the wrong narrative for people. We're not making health and wellness of available for everyone because, dog, people don't have red light. They don't have plunges. They can't like some people just don't have the ability to do all these things. And I feel like I'm able to communicate a way of, hey, do these tried and true principles, but also enjoy yourself. Like
Yeah.
we live once on this earth. And if you can't have some time to enjoy the good things and the little things that are not always the best for you, then it's kind of pointless to do all the other fitness stuff, right? So
Mhm.
I think for me, it's about creating a messaging that is available for all, not just for the micro. Understand that the biohackers of this world are the one percenters.
Yeah.
Most people can't adopt all of those principles, even though they should, and it would maybe help make them feel better. But it's not realistic for people to adopt all of those things.
Yeah.
I feel like biohackers in a lot of ways like create a little bit of a prison for themselves too. And I think like you kind of touched on this where they're stressing themselves out so much with all the rules they're creating in their life that they don't have any flexibility to be creative and do things that they maybe otherwise wouldn't normally do. And that's really limiting. Like it's kind of a limiting mindset in a lot of ways. And I feel like most people probably shouldn't live that way.
Dude, you start to get close minded.
Yeah.
I have to red light for 15 minutes and get the low light vitamin D. And the funny thing is, I do a lot of these things, but I don't stress myself out when I'm in an environment where I can't do it.
Yes.
I go travel, I don't have those things and I can still operate. People are like, dude, you cold plunge now. Like, how is the difference in recovery? I'm like, you guys understand the first 3 years I did this shit, I didn't cold plunge ever.
Yeah.
I still accomplished races and endurance feats. That is not the critical difference. Does it help? Does that consistency compound? Of course. But to your point, Harry, I think so many people stress themselves out. The anxiety of not being able to control what they're eating or
Mhm.
like their routine, it starts to eat it themselves.
Yes.
I don't take myself too seriously.
Yeah.
And I think that's my thing is like, I, I love learning about all the things, but when it's not available, I'm okay because
Yeah.
I understand that look, our ancestors had a lot less and lived a lot better. So
Mhm.
you're not going to tell me that red light and plunging is the critical difference to going to live to 100 because if you look at the blue zones, people live in other countries way longer than people in America and they don't have any of that shit.
Yes. Dude, it's so easy to be a slave to your routine or be orthorexic about your diet, but you can also be a slave to the technology too. That was one of the things I was curious to get your
Mm.
perspective on is like, how do you think about balancing knowing like, okay, when I'm not on my phone and I'm like doing a difficult run or a race and I'm like back in the lab, like Goggins talks about, that's when a lot of the growth is happening to you. But then at the same time, your business is literally requires you to have a camera on yourself and documenting this stuff. So how do you think about maybe like using technology to help you accomplish your end goal and build your brand, but also making that time to like unplug and just be a normal human and like get back in the lab too.
100%. I mean, I think it is the balance of it. I think how I see it is being present as shit when I'm in moments where I don't need to be on the device.
Yeah.
Whether it's in moments like this, but even if the cameras weren't here and you guys were like, "Yo, let's just have a chat, let's just chop it up."
Mhm.
I'm not the type that's like on my phone while I'm in a fucking conversation or when someone comes up to say what's up to me. Like the ability for me to be so grounded in who I am and present as shit in the moment while also understanding that, yeah, is it good that the camera is rolling because we can get content out of this, that we can get micro clips from this video, this podcast? 100%. I think the separation for me is just business and work and my lifestyle has kind of all conjoined into one.
Mm.
And at times it is fucking hard, but I think the best thing that I do is that I'm just present in the moment that I'm at.
Mhm.
And when I'm out doing things, if I'm out with friends, like you won't see me being the type that's always on my phone. I want to converse with the people that I'm at physically wherever I'm at. So I think how I also see it is that when I'm home, like once I'm like done with my quote unquote posting or the business side of it, I just don't consume too much shit. And that's how I kind of release where it's like, I just want to just chill and not have to be on the phone and the devices.
Yeah.
So for me, it's like that separation of, yes, work and business and lifestyles all conjoined. But when it's time to just sit down and actually be human, I could do that better than most people can.
Mhm.
And I think that parallel is how I'm able to kind of, one, stay grounded in myself, but also treat this like a business.
Mm. Are there people that you replicate your vision of being a creator, after? Are there like a handful of people? You mentioned Gary Vee, Eric Hinman, Mazza, like those guys come to mind, but anyone else that is in that mosaic of just creators that you're trying to pull into your life and just take a little bit from them and add it to what you're doing?
I think I look at creators more at how they live their life, you know?
Yeah.
And like the reason Gary just is the first person that comes up to me is because like he said this thing of watch what I do, not what I say. And that shit really hit home with me where I'm not looking at other running creators, right? Like I'm looking at guys that are trailblazing in other areas. I don't want to just be the running guy,
Yeah.
right? So for me, I like finding people that are finding what the new technology is, whether it's Bitcoin or Web3 or AI and all those things, right? Like me and my brother, we had a chat this morning. I'm like, I want to be the first AI creator. That's like, and there's already creators out there doing that
Mhm.
now. But I like seeing guys that are able to incorporate new technologies into what they're already doing. So for me, it's not like one guy. It's just I want to be the trailblazer that's also leading in the space. So guys like Gary, obviously, there's like Marquise Brownlee. He's someone in the tech space that does a
Mhm.
lot of dope tech reviews and he incorporates AI in his content. I think for me, it's more guys like that, less of it being like just a wellness and fitness space. Even though that's going to be a big part of my brand and my identity, I don't want it to stop there because I think I'd be doing myself a disservice of once again, I got so lost of being a football player. I don't want to get so lost into just being the runner, being the athlete on TikTok, right?
Yeah.
Like I want to be someone that's multifaceted. I want to be well versed and be fluent in a lot of different things, whether it's financial literacy or AI or technology or Web3. I don't have to be the expert in it. I just want to be able to sit in the room and not feel like my fucking people's convos going
Yeah.
over my head.
Yeah.
So I think to answer your question, there's the watch what I do, not what I say from Gary is something that just really hits home with me. I can't think of someone specifically, but people that are starting to then get into the AI stuff right now, that stuff intrigues me more. And I can't give you exact name.
So for you, it's more so like you seem like you're a student. You're just fascinated with learning upon all these different aspects, different fields. I know you've mentioned Naval multiple times. So it's like you just kind of absorb all these different things that are interesting to you. And that's just like your talent stack.
That's 100%. I question everything, even
Yeah.
myself. And I think most people should do that. The moment you think that like you know it all or that like you are the smartest person in the room, I think that's where you start to get surpassed. So for
Totally,
me,
man.
I want to question everything.
Yeah.
When you think about like the 3-year journey that you've had to get to the success that you've had now, for you, are there any moments that really stick out that were just affirmations or wins that were like, all right, I haven't made it yet, but I think I'm on the right track, or like this thing's actually working? Like, is there anything that sticks out for you?
Two, one's a good and a bad.
That's perfect.
Yeah, it
Sharing
is.
both if
It
you're
is.
cool with that.
The first one was when I had the opportunity to work with Nike and Dick's Sporting Goods. That shit was like like brands I dreamed of as a kid.
Yeah.
I used to have my mom take us shopping at Dick's Sporting Goods to get all the new footwear, cleats, X, Y, and Z.
Mhm.
And then Nike, above all the brands, repping them in the running space, I was like, oh shit, like we're on the right trajectory. That was a moment for me where I saw that email come in and they were like, sponsored post partnership with Nike and Dick's Sporting Goods. I was like, shit, I pinched myself there for sure.
Wow.
And I ended up working with them. Fast forward 6 months later, the Houston Marathon, where I was a bib mule, that moment on the negative side of articles being written now, bad publicity, negative feedback, negative criticism, I was like, oh shit, now we're in the moment of having to deal with like actual hate and like negative shit.
Mm.
To your point of Matt, like, you're always positive, all this good shit. Hell, like this happened in January
Mm.
where I ran into someone else's bib and I got a lot of shit on from the running community of Instagram influencer cheats the Houston Marathon because he runs in someone else's bib and runs a sub 3 hour marathon to qualify for Boston for someone else. And then the same brand, Nike and Dick's, were pissed. And I ended up at that point terminating my contract with them.
Wow.
So the brand that I loved in the moment that was like, Matt, you're doing the shit, equally was the same brand where I said, fuck it. I'd rather bet on myself than be another person in your guys' cog of the system of two huge companies.
Mhm.
And in that moment, I learned more through my own failure of making a human mistake, but also coming back from that. 2 weeks later, getting a contract with Under Armour. 3 weeks later, a contract with Adidas. And then Nike again to almost reaffirm who I am as a human of bet on yourself. So many times in this space as a creator, brands will try to put you into a contract, get you locked down because they understand that you're going to grow as you're with them, right? Like when I was with Nike and Dick's, I grew a lot. But what I was valuing myself at on day one was not the same after the month 6.
Mm.
But they wanted me to lock down on that price. And quickly I was like, you know what? I'd rather die on my own sword than someone else's. And I learned so much through that shit.
What did that teach you about sticking to your principles?
It's everything. Like if you don't, then you'll always be a slave to the system. Like there was no like even though I'm an entrepreneur, working with Nike and Dick's, you're just an employee. You're
Yeah.
just another person. You're another person in their huge system, right? And I realized that at the end of the day, if I wanted to actually be an inspiration to people, to bet on yourself and actually to live that out,
Yeah.
I would rather take a monetary hit and wait for the right partner to come into place versus play the defensive game of, all right, I'll do what you guys say, X, Y, and Z, and fall down that script. Because I would be a hypocrite if I did that. I've always tell people, I'm like, play on the offense, fuck up and learn from that versus, oh, just sit back and have them tell you what you need to do.
Mhm.
So I think for anyone, there's no other asset you should bet on than yourself, period. So if you believe that you can do something, if you can accomplish something, then do it. Because at the end of the day, no matter who these brands are, no one knows who you actually are besides yourself.
Yeah.
And you should always be able to be proud and confident on that.
That's so good. What ultimately made you decide to give Nike a second chance when they came knocking on your door again?
Well, a lot of it was that it was a different agency, it was a different model. There was no
Interesting.
exclusivity. Because before I was locked down with Nike and Dick's on an exclusive contract where I can't work with anyone else.
Wow.
So now I'm like a free agent. I can work with whoever I want on one day contracts. So I
That's
could work with
incredible.
Nike, I could work with Adidas, I could work with Under Armour, I could work with 10,000, I could work with Legends. All of it is non-exclusive. I basically I basically just show up. I'll rep your Nike shoe, the Pegasus 40, but I'm only repping it for that day. I'm just giving a product review versus me being a sponsor, right? Like being like an actual ambassador of the brand. I'm just showcasing it for a one-off.
Mm.
So the reason I took them back was one, I'm a fan of Nike. Honestly, the funny thing in that relationship, Dick's was the one that was more pissed of what happened, not Nike. So it wasn't like I had like a bad thing with Nike. It was just in that circumstance, in the heat of the moment, you truly understand who's on your back or not. And for them, they wanted to just extinguish the bad PR versus leaning into the story and saying, no, Matt's intent wasn't in this fashion. I made a video 2 days after that shit happened, and it went viral of me basically saying like, guys, I just made a human mistake. This wasn't me trying to run for someone else. And in that, everyone that I knew from Nike was like, yo, Matt, like, one, the fact that you responded in that fashion of owning it, talk about when I was saying the story of when I was in college of pointing the finger. I owned my shit and said, guys, I fucked up.
Mhm.
I didn't sign up on time, which then caused me to go find someone else's bib. That's all a reflection of who I am as an entrepreneur. When one door closes, I'm gonna find the side door. And that's actually how I treat this world. And it's why I'm able to operate with very little stress because I'm like, it'll work out,
Yeah.
you know? So that's why I ended up working with
Got
them
it.
again. It wasn't
Mm.
on an exclusive contract. It was just, I'm a free agent. I can work with whoever I want.
Mhm.
It's so funny you just said that because I was thinking in the back of my head what my next question was going to be, and it was going to be. It seems like you have this mentality of it will all work out, and it's so cool to see because I think it shows that you do have full confidence in what you're doing. And one of the things that I always try to say to people who are younger, like I have a younger brother, is really like reframe risk as just like chances to learn more, get more experience, develop yourself. And I think that it seems like your mentality around risk is really strong where you're willing to fuck it up and, take ownership of it. Where does that come from? Like what part of your story
Mm,
did you really like develop that risk taking mentality?
I appreciate you sharing that, bro. That's the fact that you're able to see that is super dope. And it's actually, my brother knows it best. It's just really where it comes from is I just don't put that much pressure on myself. True pressure is a single mom with 5 kids that's working 3 jobs to put food on the table. That's pressure. That's stress. What I'm doing is light work. So for me to bet on myself, it's easy. Like, it's actually easy as
Mhm.
fuck. That circumstance I just gave you, a mom that is working 3 jobs that can't go to her kids' soccer game and football practice, that's stress. Me as a content creator is light work. So that's how I treat everything I do. It's just that I don't think it's pressure. I don't put anxiety or stress on myself to do what I do because at the end of the day, this is all chosen. I'm putting myself out there. I'm making myself vulnerable, right? Like this is all chosen suffering, chosen stress in that sense.
Mhm.
So that's how I treat it. And for me, it's seeing my mom. Me and my brother got raised by a single mom. So I actually understand that. My mom couldn't always be there for all of our practices and all those things like other of our teammates would be. We'd see both the parents cheering John on, cheering whoever on. And we didn't always get that experience. I didn't think that I had the short end of the stick. It didn't come into fruition until later when I matured more and I actually was able to have deeper talks with my mom about why we lived a certain lifestyle, right? When you live in a divorced household, you just have different circumstances. So I think it really comes from that. That's really, really where it stems from. And then the other aspect is just having perspective. Like, like what is current stress in 2023 for most humans on earth is bullshit in the grand scheme
Yeah.
of life.
Self-inflicted.
100%. I mean, if we're really talking about what most people stress about, and I'm not talking about people that are dealing with illnesses and family issues, like health issues, for the regular guy and girl that has a good job, that's paying them 6 figures, that they have most of all the needs of humans, the stress that those people put on themselves is all BS. And if you actually reflect on that, you realize that we have it so damn good. The back to the simplicity, that's really where it comes from. It comes from my mom and how she raised me and my brother as a single mom, and then the simplicity of not needing a lot of things. So I don't stress myself out on the car or getting a bigger house on the shit that doesn't really matter.
Yeah. And to Harry's point, it made me think like, what if like the risk that we perceive as risk is not just actually risk, it's just a different decision that you can make, right? It's like, dude, we live in a period of time where you can literally take out your camera and build an incredible business just documenting your whole progression with endurance and working with brands that you always dreamed about. It's like, how can you not be optimistic thinking about that? Like we said, if you knew where you were going to be now 3 years ago, you would be so proud of yourself. And it almost forces you to catch yourself where you're like, oh shit, I wish that this deal would happen. It's like, dude, what about all the other amazing deals that you already have on the table and all these other deals that are going to come? Like you mentioned, like, okay, you lose Nike, but then you get Under Armour, Adidas, and then Nike comes back around. Like, dude, it's all going to work out.
It's, something I got from Jeremy Hills, and I always say this, and it really stuck with me when I chatted with him a couple months ago. He said, Matt, you're going to be in that point where everyone's going to want your attention. Everyone's gonna want to work with you. Everyone's gonna do, they're gonna want you to come to their event, X, Y, and Z. And he said, you need to be able to understand what's an opportunity and what's a distraction. Because honestly, sometimes the opportunity seems like an opportunity, but it's really a distraction,
Yeah.
and vice versa. And that really stuck home with me, where as humans, we never know. You never know what's on the other side of that decision until you make it. And once you do, whether it was right or wrong, whether it was a distraction or opportunity, you're gonna learn from it.
Mm.
And I think it happens to all of us. Every single day, there's something that comes up and someone wants that time. They want the coffee. They want the X, Y, and Z. And in that moment, you don't actually know what the ROI of doing that is, or saying yes or saying no. You could miss out on that guest on the pod.
Mhm.
You could miss out on that brand deal, that sponsorship, but you don't actually know until you make a decision of saying yes or no. And I think for me, it's just, as I continue to grow, it's evaluating what is a good opportunity and what's a distraction, and not beating yourself up if you miss out on something. Because at the end of the day, if you're willing to play this game long enough, it'll all come back.
Yeah.
Mm.
And that's how I'm feeling right now, because 2 months ago, my brother and I were at a publication house, and this publication wanted me to do a book. And right now, I'm just not in the season of doing that.
Mhm.
Could I see the opportunity? Of course. The thought of me making a book is ludicrous.
Yeah.
I cheated on everything. I'm like, me being an author?
Your brother's cracking up right now.
Crazy, you know? And it's funny because I actually see the future of me doing that down the line,
Mhm.
just not right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so many people, like, they put certain things on the pedestal. I want to be a public speaker. I want to be on stage. Your stage is the platforms on social right now.
Mhm.
That's your best way to get to that. But so many people want to get that because they feel like that validation of being on stage in front of 100 people, 5,000 people, whatever the number is going to validate them. But once they get that, they're going to want something else.
Mm.
Yes.
So I think for me, that's how I see it. It's either an opportunity or distraction. Don't beat yourself up, regardless of what it is.
Mm. How cool is it to work with your bro now?
It's awesome.
He's in the room.
He's
for
in the
people
room
listening.
right now. And he's honestly in the room, and he's behind the scenes on so much of my shit. And it's awesome being able to see us at this age in life, like, continue to develop our relationship. Most siblings don't get that chance. So I think for me and my brother, it's like we've always been tight because I've always looked up to my brother as a role model because we didn't have a dad in our life. So my mom put a lot of burden on him when we were young. She couldn't afford a babysitter. So me and him would just be at home trying not to burn the house down.
Yeah.
And now to see us at this age, we recently just got a house here in Austin. It's amazing at this stage of our life to kind of redefine our relationship as brothers, as coworkers in that sense, because it is so different. But I wouldn't want to do that shit with anyone else. Most people wouldn't do the shit that my brother does for me, no matter how much I compensated them.
Mhm.
And that's just something, as brothers, that's a different fucking bond.
Yeah. I've heard Harry say before, like, part of how he makes decisions is, am I going to regret not doing this in like a year or 2 years down the road? And so his little brother Reagan came and lived with us for a few months, and it was such an amazing period. And it's like, yeah, you're 29, he's 23, but like the amount of time that you guys actually have to potentially live together before you get married and have kids, was it like a year, 2 years?
That
Like,
was
it's such
it.
a small window.
Yeah.
So you got to seize it and take advantage of it, because you don't know how long that window actually is.
1000%. You know, something that I got from Jesse was like, and he said this specifically around parents. You know, as you get out of the house, you see your parents less and less.
Mhm.
You might see them on Thanksgiving, on Christmas, 2, 3 times a year.
Yeah.
You do the math on how many more years they're gonna live, maybe 30 years if your parents are 60. If they get to 90, you might see them 60 more times in person. When I was living at home during COVID, I didn't think of it like, oh my God, I'm at my mom's house. I thought of it like, this is a dope ass opportunity for me and my mom to get connected at a later stage in my life, where I'm 26 now, 25, and cherishing those moments instead of thinking of it like, I'm stuck at home. Because you don't know when you're gonna get these opportunities again. I don't get to see my mom as much now.
Yeah.
She lives in Delaware. I'm here in Delaware. You know how far that shit is?
Mhm.
So I think for most people, if there's an opportunity for you to get close with family at a later stage where you're more developed and you're not just that high school or middle school kid where you're just trying to like go hook up with girls or hang out with the boys or whatever it might be, cherish those moments, because as you get older, you get so much less of it.
Mm. I'm sure your mom cherished that time too.
100%. I mean, I
Yeah.
think it was great for both of us. She saw the groundwork of what I was doing, and at the time she was working on her health. So like, just being around me, she naturally was like, I got to get after it. And it was awesome. and more, it brought us even closer. Um, and I truly do. I think both of us just cherished that time during COVID. Like, you know, I wouldn't have want to be in a city. At that time, it was actually unsexy to be in the city and
Totally, dude.
wherever you were at. So we were in the suburbs, and I'm like, you know what? This is the best place for me to be right now.
Yeah. Dude,
Yeah.
that's incredible. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, it seems like it kind of laid the groundwork for everything that you're doing now. Just that time home, just like reset.
Harry,
Can-
100%, bro. Like, that was the foundation. So many people, they're like, Matt, like, how do you do this shit every day? How do you do this shit? Like, they can't comprehend it. But if they actually saw what I was doing at my mom's house when no one was watching my shit,
Mhm.
I showed up just like this. No one cared. When I had 50 views, I showed up as if I had the whole platform. Like I acted as if I had it.
Yeah.
But the ability to show up when no one was watching gave me this foundation of this is my norm now.
Mhm.
Most people are trying to get to that point. They're trying to put on the facade that they made it. I don't think I made it. I still feel like that guy that was 4 years ago, chipping away, building building the foundation of who I wanted to become.
Mhm.
And that's why it's so easy for me to show up now because I built the foundation when no one cared.
Yeah.
Besides myself.
Bro, I hope that anyone that's listening to this that has aspirations of, building a business or starting a brand or just doing something special with their lives, I really hope people were listening intently and taking notes on this. I feel like this is one of those every once in a while you have a conversation where you're like, I need to go back and listen to this like 2 or 3 times because there were so many nuggets. And I felt like this conversation was the epitome of that, dude. I feel like I learned so much more about you as a person and have so much more appreciation and respect for the journey that you've been on. And we're just very grateful to have you in studio, like become friends with you. And I can't wait to see where you are 3 years from now, dude. So just thank you so much for doing this. And dude, all the best.
Dude, thank you so much for having me, man. It was a hell of a conversation. I'm excited to do this again down the road.
We'll see you at Collective, right?
Easy, dude.
Yeah,
That's easy.
You got to come over for steaks sometime.
Yes.
Steaks
Dude,
and a
let's do
cast
that.
iron. I'm fucking in.
Let's do
Let's
it.
do
Let's
that.
go. That's easy. I love
Awesome.
that.
Thanks, Matt.
Hell yeah.